This is Candid Conversations with Dr. Mayfield, a podcast that resources families and friends with tools to have important conversations about mental and emotional health. This show is sponsored by Mayfield Counseling Centers, helping you find clarity, hope, and purpose. Here's your host, Trever Shirin.
Thank you for joining us again this week on Candid Conversations. I'm Trever Shirin, and I am joined, as always, by Dr. Mark Mayfield.
How's it going?
And today is a bit of a heavier subject, not as heavy as some that we've had.
We've kind of been lighthearted over the last couple of episodes.
Yeah,
so
it's been kind of nice, so let's dive in and make us feel miserable.
Let's go deep.
Today we're talking about how to help in a hopeless situation. And I think a lot of us have experienced these moments where you have a friend or a family member or even yourself in what feels like a hopeless situation where things are out of your control. You can't fix things. You can't change much. You're kind of stuck in this situation for however long, or your friend is, or your family member. And a lot of us, especially if you're listening to this show, tend to be helpers, individuals who want to assist and to aid.
Right.
And it's hard to do that in a situation where it doesn't look like you could do anything to change the situation.
Think about this. Most natural helpers are fixers. Right? I mean, if you were to consider, think about those of you that are listening, and I know you and I we think about this all the time because we're challenged in this, that it's our natural, part of the reason we're counselors is that it's a natural bent to help. Like, that's just how we're wired.
Yeah.
But a part of helping sometimes gets crossed over with fixing. And so when you come to a situation where it feels hopeless, fixing actually makes it worse, doesn't it?
Can you explain just a little bit of the differences between help and fix?
I think a natural helper is we see somebody in need and we want to comfort, we want to come alongside, we want to make their situation better. I think that's the desire, right? So most natural helpers have this desire to see humanity be better, to see their world be, happier or
pain soothed.
Right. Fixing is we're going to do whatever we can to make that happen. And if you're in a relationship with somebody, you know that often doesn't work.
Yeah. I'm thinking about, like, if your car is broken and you go out to the car and you say, it sounds like your engine isn't working very well. That really sucks.
Right.
I'm really appreciative of who you are as a car. Like, that's where helping is not going to make the situation better.
No, there's time to fix.
Because you have to fix.
Right.
And how it is equally true, vice versa.
It is. And that's where I think in a lot of relationships, I really encourage, especially when counseling session, why don't you ask? You ask the person that you're wanting to help, what do you need? And take them for their word. Because if I'm in a relationship with somebody and they say, hey, I just need you to listen right now. Okay.
Yeah. My
natural fixing desire is still going to be there, but they asked me to listen, so I'm going to listen.
Yeah.
If I'm in, hey, I need you to come up with a solution. Okay. I'm listening, and now I'm coming up with a solution.
Right.
Or fix this. Oh, okay.
Got it.
Thanks. But I think a lot of times we misread those things, especially in if you're not trained as a counselor, or even if you're trained as a counselor,
right.
And you're a husband like myself, and I get those wires crossed sometimes at home. But in a helpless or hopeless situation, I think it kind of hits home for our country. If you think about the rise in suicide, I was looking at the National Association for Suicide Prevention website the other day, and they have a really interactive map where you can click on Colorado, and it talks about the different demographics and the amount of suicides that have happened.
Yeah.
And then you click Montana, and you click, so you can click every state. And as a professional, it's depressing.
Yeah.
But to be somebody that's listening that goes, okay, my neighbor's son just took his life. Like, I want to help. Right? That's natural. Right. I want to help. What do I do?
It's the care within a person for another.
And I've seen so many people come through my office and through these doors that have had well-meaning neighbors and friends make it worse by needing to say something. So think about maybe our listeners, think about last time that you were in a situation where somebody passed away or it felt hopeless, and you had this urge to do something or to say something, what was that about?
Yeah.
It's usually about us, right? Usually about making us feel better.
Right.
And so we make a placation that is just stupid. I had somebody the other day say, I know this person was well-meaning, but I wanted to punch them. And I said, well, what did they say? They said, well, at least you have 3 other kids.
Yikes.
And I'm like,
Yikes.
it doesn't make it any better that the other, the 4th child was the one that took their life or died in a car accident, or like, why would you say something like that? Or at least you'll see them in heaven. Like, so we say dumb things to make ourselves feel better.
And I think a lot of it comes from our uncomfortability sitting with silence, which if you want, emotions, those two, I'd suggest going back to the podcast that we did about silence. It was really fun, but I can remember times when I've been really hurting, and there are people who even have like the right thing to say, something that does genuinely encourage me or that. And what I really wanted in that moment was just for somebody to sit with me in silence in the midst of my pain and for me to feel it and get it out in that moment because it was ready, it was ripe.
Right.
Rather than, okay, now I've got to put it away and it's going to come out another time because it has to get out somehow. And I do feel a little bit better because you had the right word, but I really would have preferred that next week.
Well, it's interesting. There's 2 things that come to mind. There was a meme I just shared on social media. It was this individual, hey, I see you're hurting. What do you need? And the individual goes, I don't know. And the other person goes, okay. And then just plops down next to him and grabs their hand. Like, yeah, that's beautiful. That's
well, and you've talked before about the Jewish tradition of sitting Shiva. And we see this in the book of Job specifically, but as part of their culture, Job's friends sat with him in silence, not saying a single word.
Yeah, other ones that tried to say stuff, but those were the...
Well, and then when they started talking, that's when like everything goes to crap.
Right,
and
absolutely.
they're like, you read it and you're like, oh, just stop talking.
Right,
just go back to the sitting in silence.
Well, it's amazing how presence is powerful. And you and I, and I think a lot of counselors, well, maybe not a lot, I shouldn't say that, but some counselors understand the fact that our presence is more powerful than anything else.
Yeah.
And it's this idea that and I think you can talk a little about this too, but our brain doesn't really fully function. Our mind, our brain connection don't fully function unless in relationship with somebody else.
Yeah.
Like we need to be in relationship. But when I say relationship, again, we have to define that because a lot of people think, well, I'm in a relationship. Well, are you in a relationship that you feel seen beyond what's going on? Do you feel that you have some safety to be yourself and to be vulnerable? And then do you feel like you're going to be soothed or at least cared for in that? Now I've got a secure relationship. And that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Not just saying, well, I'm married or I've got a mom or a dad. Right. But how do they present? How do they engage?
Yeah, it's kind of like having a car, but is it working?
Right.
Is it getting you anywhere?
Yeah, I've got a Mercedes. Great.
Does it run?
Does it run?
Yeah, it's kind of the same concept. And there have been a lot of studies about the process of change and different things that help with change, specifically around counseling. And this was something that I was shown like day 2 of my master's degree, was that the majority of the change process is attributed to things that a client does outside of the counseling relationship, which makes sense because if you're only in counseling for 1 hour a week,
right,
there's so much more time outside of counseling than inside, and you're able to put things into practice. And then the second most influential aspect of change was the relationship between the client and the therapist.
Yeah, we're giving our secrets away here. Like, honestly, I mean, I've said this jokingly, but there's some truth to it that I would prefer to work myself out of a job.
Totally.
Right? Because that means that our community is doing what they're supposed to. Counseling came out of a void of relationship. And you're right. The most powerful thing for change in a counseling setting is the therapeutic relationship.
Which goes to Irvin Yalom, a really well-known therapist, his concept of a paid friend.
Right.
Sometimes you just have to pay somebody to be your friend for a time so that you can have that relationship. Your brain can catch up.
Well, that's why it's candid conversations. I'm just going to go for it. That's why I despise the medical model, because let's throw a label on and give you some medication and you should be okay. But it's not teasing out any of the relational piece. It's not providing a place for being seen, being safe and soothed to develop a security. It's going, let's take care of the problem and then you'll be fine. Well, no, it's not really taking care of the problem. It's masking the problem. Maybe giving you a leg up, and that's fine. I think a lot of times there's people that are so steeped and so deep in their struggle that medication kind of helps them take a deep breath, and then therapy and the relationship starts to work, right? Mm-hmm. And I think there's people too that are on medication for long periods of time, and that's fine too, based on the needs, right? Yeah. But to jump into a medical model right away negates the power of that relationship.
Yeah, going to your doctor and filling out this 10-question thing that
are you sad?
Doctor looks
are you mad?
Yeah, right. Looks, oh, you scored 3, so let's give you this medication.
Right. I mean, I work with a lot of people that I've had a lot of people that I work with, for years, and they're like, okay, do you think medication is something that's necessary? And I said, it might be something that you need to look at. And here is a trained professional in this field that does will ask you more questions than I ask, because they, even though they have prescriber abilities, they want to prescribe as a last resort. Oh, so they're going to listen to me, and it's not going to be a 15-minute conversation? Yeah. Well, yeah. And then it's that collaborative, that piece. But back to our topic of, if we were doing relationship well, if we were practicing the presence well, if we were
sitting in silence
well, I think I'm just going to throw out a statistic, and but I would say maybe 75 to 80% of counseling needs would go away.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I think there is legitimately those individuals who need professional care.
Sure.
And there are a lot of people who just need care.
Right. And
which professionals are more than willing to offer. But
well, right, especially in our culture.
If we're able to offer care to others in an authentic way, and in a way that is not trying to fix, because I think there's a big difference, and we've talked about it, between fixing and care.
Yep.
And to continue with the car analogy, just because I think it has some value. I have an uncle who really cares about his vehicles, and I fix my vehicles. The difference is his cars are nicer, his cars look nicer, his cars are detailed, his cars are running optimally, because he cares about how they're operating, what's going on. And for me, if something's broken, I need to fix it. I need to repair. I need to make sure that it at least runs. It's bare minimum kind of thing. And that's what the car needs.
But I think a lot of times the fixing is a bare minimum.
Right.
Right. Yeah, and that's in relationships too, right? Yeah, that's a great analogy. But we're asking people to care.
Yeah, and when we're in that situation of hopelessness, we really don't need bare minimum. No. Sometimes, I mean, you could put it in a way where, like, we do need bare minimum.
Well, sure.
But we need more than just, how can I fix this for you?
Well, I think about, because I've worked with numerous families in this community that have lost a child to suicide.
You can't fix that.
You can't fix it. No. And, many of these individuals have said, I wish my friends would just say, hey, you want to go play golf? Mm. And just, let's go play golf.
Yeah.
And allow me to laugh and to reminisce and to cry, but don't try to fix me. But people are scared of that.
Yeah.
Because, it makes us uncomfortable. And that goes, right now at this moment, we could splinter this conversation in 15 different ways, but it goes back to our own emotional intelligence. It goes back to, our own motives. A lot of different things into that. But if we're not comfortable and secure in ourselves, when we sit with somebody that's hopeless, it leaches onto us, and now we want to fix it because we want to feel better, and that's not the point.
Right. Yeah, and I'm wondering what it would look like for that person that you're thinking of right now who's in a hopeless situation, to just invite them to coffee and sit and talk about normal things.
Well, And I'm going to challenge our listeners too. Don't fall into the trap of asking somebody how they're doing when you already know how they're doing. Ask questions like, tell me about your week.
Yeah. Got any plans for this weekend?
How's your journey up to this point? Right? Because if they're in a hopeless situation or a situation at this moment that is so deep and dark that they don't see the other side of it, asking them how they're doing just adds gasoline. But to kind of come alongside and go, those open-ended questions for them to talk, is a big deal.
Open-ended so that you have the opportunity to talk about things that aren't what the problem that's going on, but also making room for when that person is ready to talk about it.
Yeah.
It's available.
Yeah. I usually ask the question, what's your week been like? I recognize that there's some depth. They can say, well, this really good thing. Okay. We're going good.
Right.
Sweet. Or, man, I was confronted with reminders of this individual 5 or 6 times, and it was really hard, and I just wanted to stay in bed, and a couple of days I did, and one day I really pushed myself to get, and you're just, okay, how can I support you in that? And you ask those questions more of how can I support you in this? What do you need?
Yeah.
And I think that, well, let me go back to retract that what do you need question, because I think a lot of times the individuals in the hopeless, they don't know what they need. And so that's more of a placation again, I think, of us going, okay, if they can tell me what they need, I can fit that for them and I can feel better. And the best things I've seen is, opening and ended questions, letting them go wherever it goes and then going, okay.
Or even given options. Being able to say like, hey, can I do this for you?
Yeah.
Yes or no. I mean, there's benefit to being able to.
There is, but a lot of times in the early stages, that's hard as well.
Yeah, this is more of after it's been a time, being able to, after you've sat in the silence and when it's time to start talking again, there is room to be able to offer, hey, can I take you out to coffee?
Yeah.
Every Thursday or
one of the things that's really
helped
me with a friend that was going through something similar many years ago was, it was the first step. Hey, I'm taking you out for coffee next week. What works best for you? And they gave me a date. Okay. And then in that moment of open-ended questions and just sitting with them would be, okay, same time next week. Right. Not giving them an option in some ways. But also remembering too, and this is where I really want to be mindful. And I've heard this numerous times this week, and it just ruffles my feathers, that there are no stages of grief. The stages of grief that we look at from a Kubler-Ross standpoint were made for people that were dying.
Right.
So, Trevor, you've been diagnosed with terminal cancer. Okay, those stages of grief apply.
Right.
Anger and denial and all that kind of stuff. But for somebody that has lost somebody, there's this model that's kind of like this valley, and there's potential feelings, and then as we come up, there's more potential feelings. But usually I draw with my clients, I draw just this messy line and the feelings and everything like that. Because everybody's process is different.
And you process grief differently every single time.
Right. And so, I've got something that's going on and near and dear to my heart, and everybody is processing and grieving differently. And I had somebody ask me the other day, I said, is it normal for somebody to grieve this way? And I said, what is normal? If they are not able to get out of bed 3 months from now, maybe we should be concerned. But right now, if they're not getting out of bed, they're not getting out of bed.
Right.
That's okay. To be honest, my way of dealing through grief is I'm going to be busy. I'm just going to, maybe that's not healthy. I don't know. That's just kind of how I process. And if emotion comes up, now I pay attention to, okay, I'm feeling kind of sad today.
Yeah.
I'm not going to judge it. I'm not going to wish it away. I'm just going to, it is what it is today.
Yeah.
I don't cry. I cry when I watch movies and that kind of, but when it comes to grief and that kind of stuff, if the tears come, tears come.
Mm-hmm.
But for others, maybe they won't shed a tear. Doesn't mean that they're not grieving any differently than the person sitting next to them. Right. And so I think I wanted to make very clear that as you're walking with somebody and they're not doing it the way you would do it, doesn't mean they're doing it wrong.
Right. And that the stages of grief don't apply unless you're the one diagnosed with a terminal something.
Man, I wish we would. I don't know how this got taken onto the bandwagon that, well, these are your stages of grief. And then 'cause I remember many years ago, somebody goes, that was a bunch of BS. Like, I'm not going through all these stages. What's wrong with me? And I'm like, nothing. Because somebody told you wrong. So I want to make sure that our listeners hear that too.
Yeah. And I think that that applies to any kind of loss or struggle in a hopeless situation. There's a real similarity to grief, because grief isn't necessarily just the loss of a person.
Right. No,
it can be the loss of a situation, of an ability. It can be
a dream, a hope.
A dream.
Yep.
I want to have an individual I know, Jesse Steffes, who does grief work on at some point to talk about grief in a layman's perspective, because I think it's really helpful, like we've talked about before, to have some understanding of what generally goes on and some education around it to be able to help.
Yep. I think it's great. So if you're in have a friend that's in a hopeless situation, or you yourself in a hopeless situation, take stock of those in your life that you can surround yourself with that can be just a great presence. And as Dr. Yalom would say, it's okay to pay a friend.
Totally.
So find a counselor that works in your area that's like-minded, that can walk with you through this. It could be 6 weeks, it could be 6 months, but you might need that.
Yeah. Feel free to reach out to us. We'd love to help you get connected with a therapist here or elsewhere. You can do that 719-452-4803, or you can email us candid@mayfieldcounseling.com.
Thank you for joining Candid Conversations. If you would like more information, you can email candid@mayfieldcounseling.com or call 719-452-4803.